Wow, how did I get into it? A little bit by accident, because I don't think private equity was something that really people knew about because it was a smaller industry, back then, 20, 20 some odd years ago. And so I started in banking, which is not always the typical track, I guess, but I started in banking, actually went into credit. So, originally on the buy side, but on credit, and started with ABN AMRO LaSalle Bank, actually in Chicago. Through their training program, I did rotations through a number of different divisions, and then ended up in a group called Special Assets. And this was when banks could actually manage off-balance sheet private equity portfolios, or they were allowed to have private equity off-balance sheet private equity portfolios. A lot of those positions were really created from loans that were, basically over leveraged, or where loans had converted into equity positions. So we called it the Special Assets Group. And that was really my launch into private equity, first time holding positions, going from, being a lender to managing as an equity owner or partial equity owner. And at the time, special assets groups had not been institutionalized. And so it was primarily made up of senior executives and very senior credit officers of the bank at the time. And I was the first associate to be permanently placed in LaSalle Bank or ABN AMRO's special assets group. So I was drinking from a fire hose for, I think, the entire time I was there. It was an amazing experience, being able to work with really, really talented people with a lot of experience. And I think that's really where I got my first taste of being an investor in private equity. And I haven't really looked back, since, but I come from an immigrant family. My father was an entrepreneur. My mother was a nurse, but one thing I always saw them do is if they pursued, they worked in industries that they loved. So they loved their jobs. And if they didn't like the situation they were in, they created a better situation for themselves. And I'm fortunate that I have parents that taught me that early. So I think I always knew I was going to be an entrepreneur. I didn't know how in this industry you are an entrepreneur, right? I worked at large institutions, and starting a large institution like that's not really an option. And then in private equity, for me, I think there's just innately, I made the decision, I think, to start my own firm for a number of reasons. But, at the end of the day, it was really because I wanted to be in control of my own destiny. And when I think about my destiny, like having control over your destiny, like what does that mean? Right? It means, for me, building a firm with a culture that I'm proud of, that's inclusive, diverse. It's in my DNA. It's in my partner's DNA as well. And also, I think making sure that we are being innovative and we have a team, and I guess being able to execute on an investment thesis that I really believe in. So those were the two biggest drivers for me, and everything else kind of fell into place. Out of Chicago, and just being in the Midwest, being in Middle America, saw a lot of opportunity around lower middle market companies that were going through transitions, so generational shifts, that didn't really have access to the kind of sophisticated capital that I would say my previous firm would provide, right? Operational expertise, resources to help them grow. And so I really saw that as an opportunity. And then along the way, one of my biggest challenges, and I think not just for me, but many investors and many CEOs, was always how to stay on top of technology and figure out the use of technology, that best suited the companies that we were investing in. So not investing in technology companies, but using technologies that were proven, to create better efficiencies and to create innovation within companies that were necessary for the economy, had opportunity to grow. And so, I think one thing that makes Kinzie very unique is just the way that we approach the market with innovation and thinking about innovation, not in industries that are necessarily sexy, but industries and businesses we know are necessary for the economy to move forward. And then how do we bring operational expertise and technology expertise, to those companies? And so if I think back, I had a really unique opportunity to partner with my now current partner and co-founder, David Namkung, who is the founder of a almost 200-person technology and management consulting firm that really cut their teeth doing very difficult, large government transformations. So think like tax systems that had to go online, have a consumer interface, e-commerce, programming, and really being able to customize those things, and the complexity around that. And the complexities are not that different from taking an online manufacturer and bringing them into the 21st century with regards to technology sometimes. So that was really our investment thesis. And, that's how Kinzie started. It was an idea, it was great people, and I'm really excited about it. So starting a private equity firm is incredibly difficult, and it's almost impossible. I've actually had people tell me like, oh, you're kind of like doing the impossible. It requires a lot of capital first and foremost, and I think you have to be realistic about that. And it's just generally hard to succeed in a demanding industry like ours. I mean, in any demanding industry, but I think private equity is uniquely challenging because it's very competitive. It's extremely competitive. There are a lot of funds out there, but I think you have to really believe in what you're doing. And I think in some ways, the ignorance of not knowing how hard it was going to be was probably a blessing. And then once you're in, you just have to keep going, because you can't like start climbing Mount Everest and then go back down, right? I think once you get to a certain point, or I think I've also described it like jumping off of a cliff into water. You have no idea what it looks like, and you jump it, you're there. It's like once you jump off the cliff, you kind of have to swim. You have no choice, right, to get to save your life. So I think in terms of advice is I think one of my probably the most important things for me in starting the firm was having a group of very like trusted advisors and my own personal advisory board. And that included for me other women who have families and have paved the way. It included just others that I found, have been very successful, and, CEOs I have worked for in, my prior jobs and roles, and really looked for people who could help me in the various facets of the business that I needed to be, to learn, not just learn, but hone. If there were skills that I had that I really needed to hone, like building a team from scratch. Building a team is probably one of the most challenging and rewarding, things that I have done as a founder. And, we are now in about 3 years. We closed our first fund. We've done 2 deals out of our first fund. And the amount of growth I see in the team over the last 3 years is probably the thing I'm the most proud of, but it was also a lot of work and takes a lot of patience. And now, you know, I feel like we're at a foundational point where we're going to really be able to build more. So I am seeing signs of improvement. I think part of, with that said, I think there's a lot more the industry can do. I think part of the challenge in private equity is that people recruit out of their networks. So if you recruit within the network that looks like you and, you know, you went to the same school, everyone's going to start looking, it's going to look a little more, it's going to continue to be homogenous, right? And so, you know, one of the things, and I think this is a call to action that has come out, I mean, during COVID and the civic unrest that's, you know, really perpetrating our entire country right now. And the riots and the protests, it's about people waking up and say, you know, looking outside of their own sphere. And I think we need to do that as an industry too, is start thinking about like, where else can we recruit from? How else can we train people, right? Having the same training program, if you're hiring people that look exactly the same, it's like 2 years out of banking, 2 years out of, you know, and then business school, and it's from the same business schools, you're going to get the same type of people and with the same type of training. And one of the things that I think I'm most proud of at Kinzie is that it's not just about race and color at our firm, it's about their experiences. So if I look across even my team, I have people who have come from consulting backgrounds. I have people who have come from traditional, like myself, you know, traditional investment banking and private equity, engineering, and, you know, just thinking about having people, or corporate finance and treasury, and all those experiences actually with private equity trading have made for us a really strong and diverse team and thinkers, you know, diverse thinking as well. And it's proven over and over again. We all see the data that diversity creates better results because it creates better conversation. And so how do you recruit outside of your own sphere? I think you have to be very conscious about looking for people who don't look exactly the same, you know, the same as the last person. And that's both by race, gender, you know, experience, right? And I think one of the reasons why private equity firms have started to, and I think it's not even started to, I think it's very mature now, but private equity firms have realized having operators on their teams, right? CEOs and ex-executives that are very experienced have created a lot of value for investors. And that's because they also come from different backgrounds and have different experiences. So I think, you know, one of the things we try to do, and maybe I think more private equity firms are also trying to do, is really call for like a Rooney rule. So anytime we're looking for an executive at a portfolio company or within our own team, I want to see people with diverse backgrounds.